Hello and welcome to the Flipping and Wholesaling Houses in New York show. I am Michael Pinter, where I teach you how to start flipping or wholesaling houses, and if you're doing it already, how to grow your business. So the topic today by request is evictions in New York. Now, there's a lot of different ways to go about this. First, let's just talk about buying occupied properties, right? I typically do buy occupied properties because I feel it sets me apart from most other investors that won't. I have a lot of experience doing my own evictions. Just to tell you how that works. If you buy a property in your own name, which I highly recommend you don't, but I did many, many years ago, you can represent yourself in court, at least in Nassau, and in Nassau County, New York. And I found that I would rather do the evictions myself than hire an attorney. However, the way you're really supposed to buy a property is in a corporation or in an LLC. And if you own a property in Nassau in an LLC or a corporation, you're not allowed to represent yourself. You need an attorney. So it really depends on where you are, right? Because the eviction laws are different in different parts of the state. In New York City, obviously, they're the worst, right? I think uncontested evictions can take almost 2 years in New York. One of the reasons I don't buy in New York. But in Nassau or Suffolk, it takes 3-4 months uncontested, and there are ways that the tenant can push it off. What you need is to get a really good landlord-tenant attorney on your team. And this cannot be somebody who does not focus on this. I cannot implore you enough that I see all the time sellers who say, oh, I started the eviction with my cousin who's a labor law attorney or who's a litigator and doesn't know anything about landlord-tenant law, and the whole thing gets screwed up. You need somebody who focuses on it. And ideally, you want somebody who represents both sides, a guy who represents landlords and tenants, and they really know how the whole system works in your area. So now let me just explain. So even in New York City, where let's say it takes 2 years, there's still a price where it's worth it to buy an occupied property, right? If I can buy something for $100,000 that's worth $800,000 and it'll take me 2 years to evict, it's still worth it. You have to figure in this whole eviction process, getting the tenants out, on how much it'll cost. So I usually figure in Nassau, it'll take me 4 months to get a tenant out. I figure out what my monthly costs are. So if I borrowed money, what the interest costs are, what the taxes are, what all the general costs are going to be, plus what the costs of my attorney are going to be, and the eviction costs. Now, your attorney costs, well, you got to talk to an attorney and see what they'll charge, but they're going to vary depending on how much involvement they need. So if an attorney just sends a letter out once, and the guy comes to you and negotiates and says, I'm leaving, attorney costs are going to be limited. The court costs are limited too. The only time it really gets expensive by me in Nassau is when there's actually an eviction, because when it actually goes to eviction, you have to hire a moving company to come take all the stuff and store it for 30 days. That could be thousands of dollars. Short of that, it's not a lot. Even the attorney costs aren't going to be that much, $1,000, $2,000 max. So you got to figure that in. So my first step, my go-to step all the time is to go to the occupants and say, I want to work something out. I'll give you money to leave, right? And I'll start a little lower, but I'll figure out what my costs are and I'll pay it to them. I'd rather pay it to them than pay all the holding costs and pay attorneys and pay court fees. I'd rather pay it to the occupant. So I'm going to offer them money to leave. The problem is most occupants aren't even going to respond. It's very hard, right? I'd say half won't even respond to you. They don't want to deal with it. They don't want to think about it. And of the half that do, maybe half will, in my experience, will then take the deal. So 75% of the time you're going to have to evict. And here's the really important thing you got to know. Always start the eviction process no matter what the occupant tells you. Occupants will lie to you nonstop. Oh, I'm just looking for a place. Before I knew that people lie, I went into the property and they had all their stuff in boxes. I figured, oh, they're out of here. But people were looking to just jerk me around. So always go through the eviction process until they're out, and always get them to sign something that says they release you and that they got paid and that you're out of there. And also make sure, very important, make sure you're speaking to everybody that's in the property. When I get people to sign, they sign that no one is living there anymore. Because one time I got people to sign to leave, I paid them, and they didn't tell me that there was another tenant in there. That was a disaster. So the eviction process by me, again, 3-4 months, not terrible, much worse than in other parts of the country. Other parts of the country, it's like 30 days, 45 days. By us, it's longer. They look at us like it's crazy, but it's not terrible. So you have to be aware of what's going on. Also, you got to be aware of who they are. If you bought a property in a foreclosure auction or in a foreclosure situation, and they were bona fide tenants, real tenants, not the owner or a relative of the owner, you may have to give them a lot more notice. So you need an attorney who knows what's going on, and you need to always err on the side of caution. So I did a real screw up on a deal that I sold recently, where we closed on the 31st of the month, closed on the 31st of the month, and we served them that day. And their attorney, they had an attorney, said we're going to challenge the service, which means they're going to say that we didn't have enough time between the time we closed until the end of that day to get them served, right? They have to be served by a process server. And they had a case, and I didn't want to deal with it. So I just served them again, and we started, and we lost 2-3 months. So don't take things very close. Just go through the process and go through all the things you have to do. The basic steps of an eviction are you have to serve the occupants with notice that they have to leave by a certain date. Usually you have to serve them before the end of the month and give them at least 30 days till the next month. When they don't leave, you then have to go to court and get a court date. So in Nassau, and then you have to serve them notice of that court date, certain papers that specifically between 12 and 5 days before. You can't serve them too early, you can't serve them too late. And that's the number one reason when I go to court where I see people screwing up all the time is service. So again, hire an attorney who knows how to do this. Maybe even have the attorney hire the process server. I used to hire my own process server to serve the tenants. But that's really the way it's got to go. And then you show up in court, and they can get an adjournment, which means postponement. But if they get one, maybe two in the crazy circumstances, then they show up, and you have to go then for mediation. And the court does not want to try this case. They want you to work it out. When you go to mediation, a lot of really stupid landlords will say, I don't want anything. They don't want to deal with them. They just want them out. But what you could do, and what works for me a lot, is that I'll say, you know what? You give me X amount of dollars today by the end of the day. Then you give me X amount of dollars in 3 weeks. And then you can stay for 6 months, something like that. I create a situation where it's a little difficult, where I think that they won't actually listen to it. They write a stipulation which says to the court they promise to pay this amount of money by a certain time. They look at it as I'm pushing this off and I don't have to deal with it, and then they don't follow what the court ordered stipulation, what they agreed to. Then you're really in good shape, because if they don't follow a stipulation, you can then just send the court an affidavit of non-compliance. They didn't comply, and then you not immediately, but you quickly get a warrant for possession, which is an eviction. Basically the thing you need to get them evicted. And you might also get a judgment for money. It's very hard to collect the money. It's much more important to get them out. So that's the basic steps of it. You have to serve them notice that they have to leave. When they don't leave, you then need to get a court date that says come to court, and then come to court. Then you negotiate with them. And if they don't agree to anything you say, then you can then you go to a trial. But that takes longer also. So I find a much better situation is having them agree to a stipulation that I don't think they'll abide by. If they do, then you got some money. And if they don't, then you can get them out sooner. That's the basic evictions by me. But again, like an adjournment in Nassau or Suffolk County will be like 2, 3, 4 weeks. An adjournment in New York City can be like 3 or 4 months. That's why it takes so much longer. So, and the best thing happens is they don't show up. If they don't show up, you automatically get a warrant for possession and a judgment for money. So that's the best thing. You hope that they don't show up. But then, of course, this is not the end. Even if you get a judgment and a warrant for possession, they can then file an order to show cause. These are all things that you need to talk to an attorney about. But you need to use an attorney who specializes in landlord-tenant issues. Do not use an attorney who's a generalist. Do not use an attorney who's your cousin who heard about how this works. Do not use somebody who specializes and is worth spending more money. If you need a good landlord-tenant attorney in New York, I'm happy to help you with my guys. My guys are great. And if you're interested in flipping houses or doing any of these things, or how I can help you, go to howtoflipnewyork.com. If you like these videos, please click like. If you want to share these. All comments get responded to. This topic was by request, so any requests you have, there are no bad topics. I'm happy to help you in any way that I can. I thank you very much. If you haven't subscribed on YouTube, please subscribe. And all my information, including my phone number, is on top on Facebook or below in YouTube. So thank you very much for watching. I really appreciate it.